In the business world, we talk a lot about pain points and meeting your clients where they are and what kinds of things do they need to know before they're ready for your services. And I feel like those kinds of questions don't happen in the photography world because we just imagine everybody wants photos. We don't think about it in the same way that business people do. And figuring out the questions that people might have during the buying process, I think is what would be most helpful in your content planning.
Well, hello, and welcome to season 2 of the Simple and Smart SEO show.
The podcast for solopreneurs, service providers, and e-commerce sellers who want to learn the basics of SEO in all the places it shows up.
I'm Crystal Waddell. I help Shopify store owners go from feeling like an SEO zero to your very own SEO hero in just one day using AI, UX, and other tech ninja moves.
And I'm Brittany Herzberg, SEO and case study copywriter, helping service pros increase sales without being on 24/7, using the power of SEO, story, and social proof.
Join us. We're just a couple of business besties who love learning and sharing what we've learned,
as we show you how simple
and smart
SEO can be. So what are we waiting for? Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Simple and Smart SEO show, where today we have Colie James with us. And I actually really loved what you put on the intake form sheet thingamajigger where you said systems fairy godmother. I want to talk more about this. And Crystal's here. Say hi, Crystal.
Hi, guys.
So let's get into the conversation. I know that we have a few little things that we want to talk about, but tell us a little bit more about your backstory, because it involves photography and systems and 2 websites, and we were just talking about it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Colie James. I am your Dubsado systems fairy godmother for anyone who needs one. But at the beginning of my journey to being an entrepreneur, I started my photography business in 2012. And I started that business because I had recently become a mother and I did not want to return to my former life of a college professor. And so I was like, okay, what can I do to not have to go back and work for someone else? Because I don't really like being told what to do. That's just a little secret about myself. But I thought about becoming a real estate agent. I thought about opening my own daycare center, but I had always really loved photography. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get really serious about this and see if I can make it a business. And so I've done that since 2012. And then in 2020, so like beginning of the pandemic, guys, I went on one of my business besties' podcasts. It's called This Can't Be That Hard. And she brought me on as like a systems CRM expert. And so we had this conversation. And at that point, I was not setting up systems for anybody. I was only doing it for like my business photography coaching people. Like I wasn't doing it as a standalone service. And we hit stop on the recording. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do now. By the end of the year, I had a course, which was immediately followed by Dubsado VIP days, where I will set your entire system up for you. And it just morphed into this thing. And now, whereas my business was originally like 50-50 when I started offering systems, now it's definitely like 75% systems, 25% photography.
Oh, that feels familiar, because I went from, I don't know if we even talked about this, but I went from full-time massage. So again, around 2020, 2021 is when I officially launched myself as a copywriter, but then it was a little more 50-50. And now I'm 100% copywriting because we're still trying to figure out where we want to live. And when you transfer, fun fact, massage therapist, when you transfer your license to Connecticut, you have to know what town you're going to be in.
Oh, wow.
And I don't, because the rates are like all over the place, but I'm excited. This is so cool.
This is so cool. I love systems, and I have to make a comment here really quick. It must have been somewhere around where I realized like all my systems and workflows were completely busted, and now they're only slightly busted, but they were completely busted. And then I watched the guy from Dubsado do these trainings, and I was like, that's it right there. Like he was connecting all these dots. So I just fell in love with Dubsado, but still the actual putting it all together still feels a little hard for me. So that's definitely something I'm loving that you're here to maybe talk about a little bit, because systems make everything so much easier, but they're just so hard sometimes. It feels like to get them off the ground, you know?
That's true. And you're talking about Cameron Macbeth. Shout out to Cameron. He is super awesome. But one thing that I want to make a shout out to, in case you didn't know it, is they also do user hosted webinars. And I've done one, which I actually thought you were going to tell me that you had seen my webinar on Dubsado, but it's specifically for photographers. So that wouldn't be for you. But what I am going to do is just put a little shout out that if you have a specialty, if you go to Dubsado's YouTube channel and you type in like how to use Dubsado as a photographer, for example, you'll see my user webinar, but you'll also see 5 or 6 others that they've done for photographers. So for anybody in the listening audience, if you need help, definitely go to their YouTube and see if another user that does the same thing that you do has done a video, because then they're talking about specific features that help you do what you do best.
And that's part of the hard part too. I remember the training because you sent it to me. I think I watched it like 2 or 3 times. That was really when I was like, what's in my head and how can I get it on paper and what are the actual steps? Like for me, that was the hard part, is like just getting it out of my head, because everything has lived in there for so long and it just doesn't need to. That was an incredible training. But anyway, getting back to SEO, before I forget, how do you explain SEO to somebody?
It's the way that people find you on the internet.
Sold. We're done here.
It's whatever someone would type into Google, to where if they typed this thing, you want Google to show them your website. And we're going to talk about this more, ladies, but I want your website to be what shows. Like not your Instagram, not your YouTube channel. If someone's Googling you, your name specifically, but also what you do, you really do want your website to be the first thing that it suggests, and not some other platform that you don't own.
That's a really good point. And even just this morning, I was talking with I had done an SEO packet for a client, and she's, how could I get my business name to rank? And I was like, this is going to sound harsh, but no one is looking for your business name. It took a long time before people were actually looking up Nike or insert any brand name. Like they're looking for what you do, which is go back and look at the packet and make sure that that feels good and that feels in alignment with what you do and who you help and how you help them.
I just stay with that analogy of Nike. They're not looking for Nike. They're looking for women's running shoes or running shoes, cool shoes for school or something. It's really important to meet them where they're at and then see where you can position yourself along the way. I agree with you that your website should show up first. Obviously, that's the most ideal. But I want to also point out that having your name show up in those other places is still good, because if you are dominating that search engine results page, say that somebody saw your name somewhere and they do think of it and they're like, what was that place? Like Collage something. I sell, for all of your photography friends listening, I sell senior photo props. So hit me up, y'all, hit me up. But yeah, so if somebody remembers the name of our business, they might search collagen or wood collage or something like that. And we still fill up the search engine results page because of our website, because of images on Pinterest, because of Instagram, definitely because of my name on LinkedIn. So I want to encourage people to still do those things. But yes, love the fact that, above all else, let's send them to your website first.
The reason that I mentioned that was because recently I was telling someone about someone's service, and I'm not going to say it on here because it's a really bad look, but I gave them their name. And when they Googled it, that person did not appear like with their business name. And it was her name also, but like her website didn't appear even if you typed the name. It was just a weird thing. I Googled my business listing popped up, but it didn't have a website attached to it. That was definitely like a big fat fail. And so I guess I'm just saying, like your website, if someone Googled your name or your business name, you would really hope that your website would pop up.
Yeah, we do these website audits. If you are a business and you do what Colie just said to do, and you put your name in search and you don't show up, that is sign number 1 that you need somebody to come alongside and help you show up. Because if you can't rank for your own name, there's something wrong there. And we can help you. We can help you fix that. But I think that's a great takeaway already from this episode is go Google yourself. Have we said that? Go Google yourself.
Go Google yourself.
Go Google your business.
I have definitely said that. I like that it sounds like slightly insulting, but also, no, please go do this.
Yeah. So I may be a little abrasive today. I'm hungry.
Eat your grapes. Okay. So I wanted to talk about your photography business, Colie, and how you got that business to rank. We were talking about this just before we hit record. So what were you doing well with that? And tell us a little bit about what happened.
So I know that like now everybody says word of mouth, referrals, all the good things. But what you have to understand about the beginning of my business is that I live in Colorado. I've lived in Colorado the entire time that I was an entrepreneur, but we moved here and I knew no one. Probably 2.5 years before I started my business. But in that 2.5 years, like I didn't meet very many people. I'm an extrovert, but I'm also introverted. So we didn't have a network here. And so when people kept saying, oh, word of mouth is where it's at, I'm like, yeah, but I don't know anybody. So that doesn't really help me. So I was like, no, I knew from the start of my business that having myself found on Google was important. And one other thing to note about myself is that I do in-home sessions, which were not super popular in 2012 like they are now. And so I didn't run Google ads in order to get found because I would have been getting a lot of people who were looking for like outdoor family portrait sessions instead of the documentary lifestyle type of work that I did. So from the very beginning, I was like, okay, I need to be found on Google and ads are not going to get me there. So what should I do? I was reading about SEO, learning about SEO. I was constantly blogging. I was constantly updating my website. And by the end of my first year, I would say that 90% of my inquiries were coming from Google. And I was, of course, paying attention to this as an analytics person. I was always in Google Analytics trying to say, okay, this person landed on this page and then where did they go? And how long did they spend on that page? So I was really into the data and I was really into making sure that I was being found on what we would now call like local SEO search terms. I was doing all the things with all of the cities surrounding here because we've got Boulder, we've got Denver, but we've also got a lot of other suburb type cities in between. And that is where I would find the majority of my clients. So SEO was just like where I put all of my marketing dollars and marketing time, if you will, in the beginning.
And when you say you were blogging, do you even remember what some of those initial blogs were that you were writing?
I was blogging sessions, and I know that sounds like a bad thing, but I had lots of words with my sessions. I don't know, guys, like way back then, I was one of the few people that was like putting words because everybody just thought, oh, I just slap up a sample from the session and then we'll be good to go. So I was making sure that I was using different local SEO terms. And I was also posting things that later I realized got me good SEO, but I was really just posting them for like informational purposes. If someone inquired with me and I needed to explain to them how my services were different and valued differently than like an outdoor portrait session in front of the mountain, I would write a blog post about it. And then I would send it to people when they inquired. But eventually, those are the types of posts that got ranked high and gave me better SEO.
Yeah. And it sounds like, okay, so you were doing some of the stuff that I really loved as a consumer and some of the stuff that I do now as a copywriter. So as a consumer, I mentioned to you when I was over on your show that before I became a massage therapist, before I went to school, I thought I had the camera, I got the book, I signed up for the course. And then the week before they're like, and we're canceling class because of lack of enrollment. And I was like, okay, that kind of sucks. But I got to that point because I had followed Jasmine Star. There was another guy, Colie James, that blessed photography. Like I used to go and every week I would read about the sessions that they had dropped because they did exactly what you were doing. It was the story. It wasn't just the photos. It was the story. And I absolutely love reading that. But that is what leads to sales. And something else really ingenious that you did that I do with my case studies is you highlighted why it's your differentiator, what makes you unique. So I love that. That makes my heart happy.
Yeah, I love that too. And I'm surprised when you're like, oh, I added words to my sessions and whatever. You almost sounded apologetic when you mentioned that. And I'm like, no, that is so genius for so many reasons. I just think of it from the perspective of a product seller because I do e-commerce. People are coming to websites to envision themselves in whatever it is that you provide, right? So why shouldn't we give them as many opportunities to envision themselves in whatever it is that we provide? For years, I thought, I could probably write a blog about how this person decorated this letter. And I was like, no. But it's like, what are people looking for when they're like first starting their search? How to decorate a wooden letter. I was like, oh, people get tired of that. No, they won't.
No,
they will never get tired of that. And if that thing is what they're looking for, they're trying to eat everything.
And now we're talking about SEO. We're talking about blogging. But when you say that now, what I think of is like your possibilities in making like behind the scenes videos
Yeah.
of your clients decorating those wooden letters and putting that on TikTok for the people who use TikTok as a search engine. I'm not there. I'm old. But you could do that. You could put it on YouTube with a lot of SEO rich words in order to get your work out there. That way, you're writing the words, but you're also giving the people like the visuals. And I think that if it takes somebody an hour to decorate their letter, you could play it at 100 speed and you could get that all the way down to 7 minutes or whatever. I think people would just think that that was fascinating and they would love to watch it. It's like those painters. Have you guys seen those painters on TikTok where they're painting and they speed it all up? People are obsessed with that right now.
Yeah, they really are. I love it.
That's so great. Okay. So just even today, I had a client send me a wonderful review, testimonial, whatever you want to call it. And as you're saying this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder if they got any video. I'm going to email her back and ask her because what they did was they took a 2023 that we made. We turned the numbers into cupcake stands for their graduation party. And so they put the cupcakes on them. So now the cupcakes look like they're spelling out 2023. And they sent me some great pictures. But I'm like, I wonder if anybody did any other behind the scenes. So that's such a great idea. And you're so right. And that is like perfect for TikTok.
Yeah,
absolutely perfect. And people are searching for cupcake stands. Like that's showing up in Google Search Console as a search query, as a search term. But I was like, dang, I'm glad I got those up this year. You know what I mean?
No kidding. Good timing. So what is something that you find really challenging about working with SEO when it comes to, as you said, visual artistry?
It's been so long, but let me just be honest. I haven't blogged the photography in a while. I'm not going to say how long because that would be embarrassing. But I don't really think that I struggled that much. I think that, you know what, one of the problems that I had was way back then, the key terms that people wanted you to rank for were like Louisville, Colorado, newborn baby photography or whatever. And you always looking for like different versions of that. And there's a lot of cities around here. So I mean, my keyword list very long. But I think that where I struggled was finding the ones that were not local and like figuring out which ones would actually bring me queries that were local. Because I know you guys have had a Pinterest expert on the show recently. And the funny thing is, I don't find myself getting any good leads, or at least I didn't as a photographer, because when my viral pins happened, they were all Fresh 48 and none of the traffic from Pinterest was local. And so for the longest, I just felt like it was a waste of time to do keywords that weren't local SEO. So I think that was what I struggled with, just branching out from local words.
Okay, just real quick. What's Fresh 48?
Oh, a Fresh 48 is just in the hospital after you give birth. A photographer documents you before you check out, which is typically 48 hours. So it's not birth photography. It's not the baby actually coming out. It's after. And I specifically worked with sibling meetings. I had a couple videos the first year when I was still doing my photography for free to build my portfolio. My now best friend, who was not my best friend, oh my gosh, Drew was like 12 now. 12 years ago, she was not my best friend. But I videoed them in the hospital and her oldest daughter came in and met the new baby. And so almost anybody who watched that video was like, okay, Colie, I want that. So then I started to, okay, Poudre Valley Fresh 48. A Vista Fresh 48, like all the hospitals with that. And for the longest, that was really my business, was people paying me for these sibling video meetings that were just, even if you're not a mother, even if you don't have kids, you watch it and you're just bawling. You're like, oh my gosh, like this is so sweet.
It is. I think it's really neat because there's something I heard you say in there with the Fresh 48. Then you said sibling meeting. That's what people wanted, was a sibling meeting. So I think what we just experienced was that SEO kind of conversation that you have to match that product that you sell, which is the Fresh 48, with what people are actually wanting. What they're wanting is to capture the moment that the children meet each other. Yes. Sibling meeting. That's such a great illustration. I am actually going to be presenting in July to a group of photographers in North Carolina. We're going to be talking about content planning. So I was like, shoot, girl, you're right here. You're right here in front of us. Like, what do you think would be the most valuable thing for them to walk away with as photographers? Because we've already talked about SEO. I already did a basic, this is how you do keyword research. These are the fundamental technical details of SEO. But if we're going to walk out of there with a content plan that's based on SEO, what advice do you have for these North Carolina photographers?
So I feel like now I have a different perspective since I have the Dubsado system side of my business and then the photography side. Mm-hmm. In the business world, we talk a lot about pain points and meeting your clients where they are and what kinds of things do they need to know before they're ready for your services. And I feel like those kinds of questions don't happen in the photography world because we just imagine everybody wants photos. We don't think about it in the same way that business people do. And figuring out the questions that people might have during the buying process to cut them off at the head, I think is what would be most helpful in your content planning. Sometimes it's really nice to think about locations, but I feel like that's the one that everybody thinks of. Like, where should you have your family photo session this fall? And of course, then you have lots of opportunity to plan around the different locations that you love. Maybe you talk a little bit about choosing to have a session in your home instead of outside. I can see a lot of avenues to go with content planning, but really people need to think about the people that are hiring you. What questions do you think they have, or what questions have they actually asked you during the booking process that you can create content around so that if someone asks you, okay, but what's the difference between shooting at this location and this location? You have content to send them, hopefully on your blog. Maybe it's a TikTok, maybe it's an Instagram, wherever it is. You can send them that kind of information so that not only are you getting like people eyeballing your content now when you post it, but in the future, you're going to be able to refer people back to that content in order to answer questions, in order to make the booking process smoother and more consistent.
I just wrote down some questions that I've had doing my own photo sessions, being the person being photographed. But you could even have an FAQ series that you do of blogs. These are some common ones that I've seen. What outfits, like what's good for an outfit? If you're doing a family, if you're doing an individual, if you're doing like branding, whatever it is, you could easily do that. Poses, people get so weird around posing. Everyone has no idea of the hands. Like even this weekend, we were hanging out with family and two of us were like, what do we do with our hands?
You get a photo prop from collageandwood.com.
That was not subtle at all, let's be honest. But it's also really funny, Brittany, that you brought those two particular examples up.
I had more.
It's because I don't do outfits. I don't do styling consultations. I don't do posing because I am a documentary family photographer. So my content is more centered around why I don't pose you, what activities we will do so that you are not worried about how you are acting, like why it's completely appropriate to have an entire in-home session in your pajamas. Yeah. Those are things that I articulate to people instead of the how to dress for your session, how to pose, that kind of thing. So I just thought that was interesting. You hit on two that everybody asks, but I specifically don't address those because that has nothing to do with my service.
But that is your brilliance. And that is what a consumer, let's just take me, for example, because I'm all over the place with photo shoots. I love them. That is what is going to set you apart. That shows your personality. That shows your style. That makes me feel safe and comfortable with you because I know what to expect. I am the person that, Crystal knows this, I will like type in the directions and then I'm going to do the satellite view so I know where I need to park because your girl is not street parking. I cannot. If Daniel's not in the car, I cannot street park. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to know. And by you answering that proactively, that makes me feel like I trust you more, just like instantly. So keep that in mind, people.
These are things that I value so much more like after the fact, because there's been so many times that I've done things and I didn't know I should ask questions. You know what I mean? It's like after the experience, I'm like saying like getting married or like having a baby. I was really concerned about the birthing process. And I was like, okay, this is how the birth's going to go. I took a class. We executed. We're high-fiving. We're like, yeah, we had that baby. But then it's, oh crap, we didn't get the right car seat. That thing is too big for our baby. Now what are we going to do? We can't go anywhere. We're going to stay here forever. So I wasn't even prepared for the next second after the birth. That's how I roll. These are good things to know is all I'm saying. It's like, it's great to have somebody who's been there walk you through it. But okay, so you were talking earlier about local SEO. And so I have a couple follow-up questions with that. Because how do you find local SEO keywords? Do you recommend separate pages for like different suburbs and areas? Like, how would you approach that? What do you think about those two things?
So if I tried to write a page for every suburb in the Denver Boulder area, that would be so ridiculous. But The things that I did back then don't necessarily work now. So one of the things that I used to do was like adding tags, and they would be tags for every location that was near me. You don't do that anymore. That's a no-no, but that's what I did back then. Now,
why is it a no-no?
Google just doesn't like you adding all of those kinds of SEO keywords to your tags. It's like ignoring it now. I don't have the data on it, but I could show you one of my old blog posts where there were like 20 tags. Like I would never do that now. That is not something that I would do now. But back then I felt like it was working because I was ranking on like page 1 for so many of our local suburbs. Now I didn't have a page for each one, but what I would do when I was writing one of those informational blog posts that I thought was going to get highly searched, I would not do all of them for Boulder newborn photographer. I would make sure that when I wrote one that I was choosing a local SEO search term that I hadn't used on one of my other informational blog posts so that I had the variety. But I also had a lot to work with. There are like 7 or 8 cities around me that I absolutely love to work in. And because the majority of my business for a good 3 to 4 years were those fresh 48 sessions in the hospital, I was also writing blog posts for every one of those hospitals. So I focused more on blog posts, not pages. My main pages, I had one for Boulder and one for Denver for every single genre or type of session that I would do. And then I just really used my blog posts to really talk about like the other local areas, like the suburbs of the 2 major cities.
Oh, so smart. That's exactly what I was thinking before you even said it. I was like, right for the hospitals.
Yes.
Okay, so this Fresh 48, I think is so cool. When I was in the hospital with my baby, somebody came there and was like, do you want to take pictures? I was like, oh, yeah, we do.
Let's talk about that, Crystal.
Okay, yeah.
But I want to talk about why my SEO really helps me. Because what Crystal was talking about, there's Bella Baby and there are Charlie's Angels. There's a few depending on where you live in the country. But what I want to say about my local hospitals is that my SEO is so good. People contact me because they think I work for Bella Baby in the hospital. I think the last one that I got was 3 months ago. Someone was delivering at a hospital in Littleton, which is an hour away from me now in my new house. And when she wrote the inquiry, she was like, they were talking about you on the hospital tour. And then I'm laughing to myself because they weren't talking about me. So when I responded to her, I said, okay, this is what I do. And you probably saw my information. You probably Googled baby photographer at Littleton Hospital. I'm telling her this. This is probably what you Googled. I was like, and I came up number 1, but I do not work for the hospital. And they were probably not referring to me on the hospital tour. And she responded and she goes, you know what? You're so right, but I love your work so much. And in this particular instance, I sent her to someone else because it's an hour away from me now. And she only wanted photos. She didn't want video. And at this point, I don't want to drive an hour if you only want photos. There are plenty of people in South Denver that can give you amazing hospital newborn photos. I only want to drive an hour if you want one of my films. And it was their first kid. I will admit, people value the films more for the sibling meeting than they do if they're first-time parent. But that was one of those, you know what? I could say yes. I still charge a decent amount of money just for photos, but it honestly wasn't worth my time to be on call for a 3-week period and then have to drive an hour there and an hour back. But that is one of those instances where my SEO is so good, people think I'm associated with the hospital, even though I'm not.
That is so good.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I want to say, wow, props to you for being so honest with her, because what a brand builder. If she's got friends that are closer to you, she's going to be talking about, oh my gosh, I wanted this videographer, or you should check her out because I know she's in your area. She couldn't come to me and da-da-da. She didn't buy from you, but she's going to advocate for you. She's now become a brand advocate for your business. I'm just drooling over here over these possibilities. And the fact that you found your niche and you carved out these new things for yourself. One thing I saw just working with the North Carolina photographers was pet photography, searches for pet photography. So I was just wondering, what do you think about that? What are emerging trends for photographers who are looking to carve out their own niche?
I don't know that I have any good advice in this area. I will say pet photography is really gaining traction. The funny thing is, I talked about my films, right? So filmmaking and adding it into your sessions is something that's really popular now. And I've been on a couple of podcasts where people have asked me about my filmmaking, and they're always like, how did you get started? And I always say, I was doing it before it was popular. From my very first session, I took video clips back in 2012. That is way before anybody else was even thinking about making family films. Now, they were really crappy ladies. My highlights were blown. I was using a camera, which I know you guys are not photographers, but I had no control over the settings in video. All I could do was hit record. I couldn't change the lighting. I couldn't change any of it. It was just hit record and go. So the video clips that I got in the beginning were like really bad. But as I progressed, I got better. I started making full films because in the beginning, I was just getting a few clips at every session and I was making them what was called a fusion slideshow. It's where you made a slideshow of images with music and then you just throw in a handful of clips just to give it a little something special. And I made my first film completely by mistake. I went to a session. I was with them for 3.5 hours and they were teenagers. And I went to their martial arts class with them. And them kicking and all of that, there's only so many pictures that you can take of that. But the video of them doing it was amazing. They also played instruments. So like I had a lot of really great video from that session. And when I sat down to make their slideshow, I was like, oh, wow, it took a lot of video. I'll probably make a whole film out of this. I made a whole film and then I never made a slideshow again. Every time after that, I took enough video clips. But you've asked me, Crystal, how I incorporate video into these sessions. And what I have learned as a photographer is if something is happening so fast that I'm struggling to freeze it, like kids jumping on a bed, running around in circles, hitting a baseball, all of those things that are a lot of action that you have to have a shutter speed of at least 0.05 of a second in order to freeze it. That's what makes good video. And so whenever I have a moment like that and I've gotten at least one good image, I will flip over to video and start getting video clips from different angles. And that's how I incorporated video into my photography sessions.
I love that. Yeah, this is just such a great example too. Now you did it, you got started, and then through the doing, you found something new that you hadn't really considered before. And I think so many people are like, I got to have this plan and this is what I'm going to do and da-da-da-da. And you know what? You're not always going to know what you're going to do. You have to start sometimes, even with keyword research. You just got to start somewhere and pick what you think is best and then do it and then reflect on it and think, how did that work? How could it be better? Is there another opportunity here? And I think you're just giving us like example after example of this.
Yeah, you are. And then I also am realizing that that's what we did with the podcast is we just went for it. And we were like, we'll do this. We know these 4 or 5 things are the basis. These are the foundation. And then we can build from there and figure out the processes and whatever. We even talked about it on the show. But I want to go back for a second, just for the personal aside, the pet photography. Yes, it is a trend. Crystal knows this. I have a dog. He just turned 16. We had this unique opportunity. There was a photographer in Raleigh before I moved up here and she was getting ready to take the photos. And it was like the night before. And I was like, my dog is about to turn 16. She has 2 dogs. I wonder if I could ask her if I could bring my dog. Sure enough, she was like, bring him. We'll make it work. And I only had one image. I tend to show up, as we can all tell, prepared of what idea I do have in mind for what I want to happen. And I try to make it in my head to be a little bit of a looser plan. But I was like, there's one photo that I want. And this is what it is. Whatever else that happens is totally fine. And she's okay. We were able to just hang out and do whatever. And it ended up working out, even though Jack was barking at like almost every single person that walked by. It's for sure a thing.
Oh, yeah. All dogs are welcome in my session. I say dogs and grandparents, please give them all to me. You never have to ask me if they are allowed in a session because the answer is 100% yes.
So now you do Dubsado and you're super excellent about setting up these workflows for photographers. Do you do it for people beyond photographers?
I do, but my messaging is all for photographers because it's easier to talk to them. And if a dog trainer, for example, because I just did a system set up for a dog trainer, if they want to hire me, they're going to hire me even if I'm only talking to photographers. So I don't worry about that anymore, specifically photographers.
One of the things that we talked about at this session for the North Carolina photographers was that SEO, if you incorporate the things we're talking about, it's going to work. But guess what? That means that your phone's going to ring or you're going to get emails. And now you need a system and you need a way to talk to your clients and comfort them and make them feel great about this experience that they're about to go on with you. And I think that's where Dubsado comes in. So I was just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
I like to say that what I do is the back end of your business. Like your website, your SEO, your social media, all of that is the front end of your business. That's how you're actually bringing people to the spaces where you hang out, and you are nurturing them into inquiring about your services. But once they inquire, that's where your systems have to take over. That's where you have to have a way to respond to every inquiry. You have to have a way to figure out if you're a good fit. Now, for some people, that means doing a consultation call. I'm all about consultation calls. Woo-hoo. But if you go back and forth with every single one of your leads, being like, oh, I'm available on these 3 dates and time. Does this work for you? They come back and they say no. Like the back and forth can go forever. And so if you can find a way to automate the scheduling of your consultation calls, you will save yourself a lot of time and eventually money in your booking process. On this call, we've got a Dubsado user and a HoneyBook user. It doesn't actually matter which CRM you use. They all have an automated booking process where you make the offer, they sign the contract, they pay you whatever amount of money you take to get them on your calendar. If you are not automating those kinds of things, you are doing yourself a disservice. And if we're going to take one more step back towards the SEO, when your SEO works, it brings in the leads. You have to have a way to deal with those leads, and that's where your systems come in.
We just went to SEO church.
Dubsado church. But how do you set that up? Like, how do you make a plan? Because I'm like, yes, I'm on board with that. I know you're right. So how do I know what goes where in the system?
You don't start with the tools. You start with a piece of paper and a pencil. And literally you are just writing down everything that you need to send your client. So you have to send them the offer. You have to send them a client questionnaire if you use those. You have to send them a style guide, a prep guide, whatever it is that you do. You just make a list of all the things that you have to send your client. Then you write an email to send them each one of those. Then you think about where in the process you want to talk to them in between the sending them the things. It just becomes this very beautiful list of things that you want every single one of your leads or clients to experience. And then you build your systems around that. And then, and only then, do you integrate a tool in order to automate it or just make it more consistent.
And I will double down, like back you, support you, whatever the word is, because they are not coming to me today. But that is exactly what I did when I went from massage therapy. I knew my workflow, and it was a lot of heavy lifting on my end. Didn't need to be, but I preferred it like that. And I had the client base where it was practical for me. It was a little bit extra, but that's how I am. So anyway, then I roll over to copywriting, and I'm like, okay, I can't continue. This isn't sustainable. So what do I do, and what does it look like? And I did pen to paper. Do are the things that happen. Once I figured that out, then I figured out the copy and pastable things or the base messages, wrote those out, got those drafted in Google at that point. And then at that point, I was like, okay, where do I want to plug it in? Where do I want to use it? And for a while, I didn't have any kind of tool. I didn't have HoneyBook. It was just me and Google, and we were just like hanging out, and I had the stuff already in there, and it was like, boop, there you go. So it doesn't have to be like this thing that you get overwhelmed by and you start off with everything ready to go. It can be a little bit of a process, and then you can call Colie.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think so many times we do get it backwards. Oh, there's this cool tool. And one thing that has frustrated me about tools lately is, look, I don't have a lot of time to sit here and learn how to use the tool. Like, I need this tool to save me time. And sometimes I've been frustrated because it's like, oh, I start learning how to use this tool and only to find out this isn't the right fit for what I'm doing. But part of it is because I didn't have the list and the process set up. So as I'm trying to input my process, be like, okay, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And I get confused about it. This is such practical advice that many of us don't do all the way. And I'm like, even thinking about myself, I watched those videos, I wrote the stuff down.
And then what? And then what happened, Crystal?
And then what? Yeah. And then I recorded this podcast 3 years later, and it reminded me to go back and finish it. But
you got there.
So I am going to say that is why I'm going to refer you back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast. Using the webinars or the tools that the actual CRM provides you is great for like base knowledge. But if it's still not clicking for you, and everyone come hire me, shameless plug, but it's really not even about that. It is about finding resources for things that are completely related to what you offer as a service. Because what I would tell someone to do in one service is not what I would tell them to do in another service. And so as much as you can find help, whether that's free help on Google/YouTube, or it's paid help through someone who sets up systems for their business, getting something that's customized for what you offer as a service is how you are going to get the biggest return on investment when you set up your systems.
So what does that look like working with you? Let's say I've went through my own education on YouTube, the YouTube University, and fumbled. So I'm picking it back up and I'm trying to hand it off to Colie. What's that look like? What's it look like to work with you?
We start with the strategy. And I've got so many testimonials where people are like, oh my gosh, that was more than my systems. That was like a business refresh. And it's totally true. Because before I can set your systems up to sell your offer, I have to be absolutely clear on what it is that you actually do for the clients, the process that you go through. And I have to make sure that you are confident enough to sell those services at your price point.
Yeah.
I come across so many people that are really hesitant. And if you are not confident in selling your services at the particular price point, it will come across in your booking process, no matter how automated I make it. Yeah. And so that is like what I tell everybody. So the first half actually has nothing to do with the tool. It is about me asking you a lot of questions to get you to think about whether or not you are married to the services that you already have, or whether or not we have the flexibility to make changes. Because everybody, when they come to me, it's like the majority of the people are up-leveling their entire business. They're usually getting new copy for their website. They're usually getting a new website. And then the systems are just like a natural evolution to their entire business getting a facelift. And so we want to make sure that the front end of your business matches the back end of your business, and that your client experience is cohesive before they contact you and after they contact you. But I have this very long process where I ask you a lot of questions. I make you take a deep, dark look at everything in your business. And then once I understand it, then and only then do we start actually planning the customer experience, all of those touch points, and how we can automate them best for you.
I love that. And frankly, I want to switch to Dubsado next week. I love that though. And I feel like I do that a little bit with people with their SEO strategy, because I ask 3 to 5 questions. I have these 3 core ones. And if I don't get a clear answer, guess what? Your people who are searching for you are not getting a clear answer. And that is not helping anyone, because you have a solution and they have a need. And we need to get you both on the same page on Google. All right, let me ask this question, then you two can leave. All right, Colie, where can people find you online?
I guess I should say my website first, right?
Probably. James. That was what we learned today.
My website is coliejames.com. On Instagram, I have my podcast, which is the Business First Creatives Podcast. Brittany has been a guest, and that's where you can find me on the internet.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. Like any photographer that I know, I'm about to be like, go listen to this podcast.
When it comes out, I'm going to send it to my email list and specifically to the photographers and say, hey, this episode is for you. And I did want to drop one factoid about this day today. This is our 1-year anniversary of our podcast.
I just had mine last week.
Oh, congratulations to all of us.
Yes. So I'm glad you're all here to celebrate together. And B, I did want to give you a shout out and just say thank you so much for starting this podcast.
Thank you for remembering the anniversary, because I already forgot. And then you told me yesterday. That's why it takes 2 of us.
I don't remember anything, but I remember that it's our anniversary.
I love that you remembered that. Okay, I know we all have to leave. Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Thanks for joining us today.
If you like this info, subscribe before you go, so you never miss out on something related to SEO.
See you next time. Hey guys, this is Crystal, one of your co-hosts from the Simple and Smart SEO Show podcast. If you're looking for a unique, handcrafted way to spruce up your home or office, then collageandwood.com is the perfect place for you. We are a small, woman-owned business that offers a range of beautiful wooden signs for your home or office. Our talented team of artists will work with you to create a sign that perfectly suits your needs. So why wait? Use promo code SIMPLE10 to save 10%. Visit collageandwood.com today. Save 10% with promo code SIMPLE10. That's collageandwood.com.